Story 1. I shared my childhood trauma with my then newly married wife. I did not know she was a narcissist who would push this button every time she did not get what she wanted. I moved from the prison of my parents to her prison. I came out after a decade, and now she is using my children to torment me. Story 2. Very easy with the right audience. If a man is bottling things up, it is because he has reason to believe the people in the room do not have his best interests at heart, either now or later. Story 3. What is the point? No one will help you, and it may be used against you in the future. Story 4. It is hard for me to share because I genuinely do not want to. I am not saying I never do, but generally, whether happy or unhappy, I would not share with anyone. Story 5. Honestly, for many men it is not easy. Society teaches men to bottle things up or to tough it out, so opening up can feel strange or vulnerable. Those who do share often demonstrate great strength rather than weakness. Story 6. I do not know the reason why this happens, but what I have observed is that men tend to keep their feelings to themselves. That creates a void or pain, which leads them to try to fill it, often in unhealthy ways. Some turn to alcohol. With friends they cannot be open, and then the search for that one person begins. Story 7. If you asked me how my day was going and I had just been impaled by a sword, I would say fine. Story 8. Sharing feelings with strangers on the internet is far easier than sharing them with people I have to see every day. Story 9. I told my wife how I felt. I said the way she speaks to me makes me feel uncared for. She told me I had no right to feel that way. That is why I do not speak up. Story 10. It's not easy because nobody cares. In the off chance we feel comfortable enough to share our feelings, they are either completely disregarded, stored, and weaponized against us somewhere down the road, or we end up apologizing for how our feelings about their behavior toward us made them feel. Story 11. It depends greatly on context and audience. Many men find it easier to share feelings through safe channels, such as late-night conversations with close friends, anonymous forums, or even humor as a defense mechanism. What I have noticed is that there is often a gap between wanting to share and feeling safe to do so. Society creates a paradox. Men are told to open up more but are judged harshly when they show vulnerability. It is like being invited to a party but told you cannot use the front door. Men who share effectively usually cultivate relationships where they test the waters gradually, starting with small disclosures and building trust over time. It is less about the ability to share and more about finding or creating environments where that sharing is genuinely welcomed and respected. Story 12. For many men, it can be difficult because they are often taught to keep their feelings inside. Story 13. It is difficult because in recent years we have been told to open up and be vulnerable, but when you do that in real life, no one wants to be around you. Story 14. As a guy, if you open up about your feelings, they will be weaponized against you. Story 15. This generalization will get you any answer. Why not ask how easy it is for men to run a mile? Some can run 20 miles. Others cannot walk one. Story 16. The same requirements apply to men as to women. If you are taught it is okay to open up, you can. Fewer are taught this. If you keep the right company, you can. This one is on you. We choose our friends. If you treat people with respect, they will do the same for you and, on average, listen. This is also your responsibility. Story 17. It is quite hard when the tone is serious. When I share, I do so jokingly to avoid making it a big deal. Story 18. It is often considered unacceptable for a man to express his feelings. People may think he is weak and leave him behind. Story 19. It's easy if I don't mind causing problems. Feelings only cause problems for men, though. It's easier to just suck it up and push on. It's what everyone expects from us. Story 20. It is easy to report a person and have them placed on a list for sharing their feelings. Just look at the teachers who were fired over their opinions of Charlie Kirk. You have to be extra careful these days. Story 21. It is not only a question about us. Many people overestimate their capacity to cope with somebody else's emotions. That is my experience. I learned silence. Story 22. Either nobody cares or it gets weaponized against you. Pick your poison. Story 23. Men have different breaking points, but once something upsets them enough, they will confide in anyone. Bartenders know this and hear about it often. After a few drinks, men may begin oversharing in the bathroom and then bring that conversation back to the table. Story 24. I'm an evolved kind of man. I can talk about my emotions, and I have, but I won't do it again. In my last 2 relationships, I opened up, and after they pushed, I took it further. It wasn't whining, and I wasn't asking for help. It was honest. In both cases, they clearly got the ick and told me it wasn't a thing or to man up. In one case, they asked why I couldn't be more expressive like their emotionally immature ex. So I'm done playing that game. I've heard this from my male peers, and we're not falling for that. Women may say they want emotional vulnerability from their men, but they often want strength from their male partner. That doesn't mean men can't be emotionally supportive or sensitive. It takes a woman of a certain kind to see a man who is emotionally vulnerable and still regard him as a viable partner. Story 25. We all learn quickly that whenever we share our feelings, they will be weaponized against us, so we simply do not. Story 26. It has gotten easier for me, but I have amazing friends, both men and women. Story 27. I wish it were easy. A man who chooses to be vulnerable with me is extremely sexy. Story 28. It is never easy because when I share my opinion, I do not always want it to turn into a discussion. People often tell me to keep my opinions to myself because that makes it more likely others will get along with me. Ironically, people seem to get along with me more when I do not express my views. So my question is, why should I be expected to stay silent while others speak, when their remarks can be no less disrespectful than mine would be? Story 29. I have always found great strength in vulnerability. You ask the wrong question. It has never been about being easy or being hard. No one cares to listen. Story 30. Find people who are better for you. Remove from your life those who are harmful, even family or friends who are dragging you down and not supporting you. Story 31. When I was younger, it was much harder. I buried everything inside. Now, as an adult who is much more selective about whom I surround myself with, it is easier. I do not give a fuck what people think anymore. Story 32. It depends on the man and his support system. If he has friends who really listen, it is easier. For many, however, it feels like unlearning years of silence. Story 33. Based on my experience, it is impossible for them. Story 34. It is not that easy, though. I am a lot more open than I used to be. I am working on it. Story 35. I have one person with whom I share some of my deepest thoughts, and even then not the deepest. With everyone else, I have only surface conversations. Story 36. It is easy with someone who has consistently shown they can handle it. It is not easy or worth it for most people. Story 37. Please type your age and sex as requested. Story 38. Depends on who is asking. I think it is relatively easy, and most of the time it is not much, just kind of existing. Story 39. I can only speak for myself, but it can be very difficult, even impossible. First, I do not trust most people with that level of access to my inner thoughts and feelings. Second, I have been seeing a therapist for a while. It seems that keeping feelings pushed down for long enough makes it so I do not even know what I am feeling most of the time. Story 40. It's easy when you have an amazing partner who brings joy. Story 41. Almost no men I know feel comfortable sharing their feelings because they either feel no one cares or they worry they will not be perceived as manly. I am one of the older men at my job, and I try to check in on my coworkers regularly. 95% of them do not share anything, but 5% will text me out of the blue to vent, get advice, or talk. Men need to speak up and check in on their fellow men. Story 42. On here it is pretty easy. Sometimes replies include a few jerks, but there is only so much they can do. In real life, it is not so much difficult as dangerous. We spend our lives surrounded by people who are eager to punish us for it or weaponize it against us. It is not everyone, but it is enough people to be a problem, and enough that we cannot afford to form the habit. So even around people who are not like that, it still does not happen. Story 43. There are a million reasons to keep what you feel to yourself and precious few reasons to share. It is not safe to share feelings in this world. A practical solution is to earn enough money to afford a regular therapist you get along with. Then sharing becomes much easier. Story 44. It feels impossible for me. It is not because no one cares, but because of the societal pressure to be that person who cares. I feel that what I am going through does not matter because other people are going through something worse. Story 45. It's possible, but nobody really cares. Deal with it as best you can and move on. Sometimes forgetting is the best decision. Story 46. I have never been able to share my feelings. My parents raised me well and provided many comforts, but they were not genuinely interested in me or in how I felt. My ex was the only person who could handle me opening up, but she could not have a real conversation. Her responses were always some variation of asking what I wanted her to do about it. My current partner is too emotionally unstable and cannot handle much that is not related to her job. Story 47. How easy is it? As easy as opening your mouth and talking. How willing am I? That is different and very hard. I have been called weak, pussy, and not a man by family and siblings, told to get over how I was feeling, and had my vulnerabilities used against me. Now I only open up to my therapist. I was seen as weak when I told them I was seeking therapy. Story 48. I cannot type how I feel into chat generative pre-trained transformer. The moment I try to expose my thoughts to the outside world, my brain shuts down and I push all my emotions down into my stomach. It is so difficult that I cannot even acknowledge to myself that I am feeling these emotions. Story 49. I am the person all my male friends come to for venting. I do not mind it at all. Men are human beings. Why are we judging emotions? Story 50. It's not easy. At the end of the day, nobody really cares, which is probably why most men keep it to themselves. Is it healthy? Probably not. Story 51. It is easy and manly to speak about your emotions. If no one listens or understands, distance yourself from those people. Story 52. I think men in general have a tough time opening up because, for years, Generation X and baby boomers largely told men to suppress how they felt, since their perception was that no one cared. I do not personally have a problem with opening up. Often my issue is oversharing. I think who you share your feelings with matters a lot, and that sharing should be done selectively. It absolutely should be encouraged if we are going to address men's mental health. Story 53. Actually, it depends on the person. For me, it is pretty easy because I am extremely straightforward with everyone. Story 54. I can only tell my best mate, Milo. He listens intently, then licks his balls, tucks his tail under him, and falls asleep farting. Story 55. Like all things, it gets easier the more you practice. The first step to being good at something is to perform poorly at it. Story 56. It's easy to express yourself. It's just that no one cares. If someone asks how you are, they usually do not listen. They are waiting for you to stop talking so they can ask for something. This is true of many people. I grew up around women who listen on the surface but often care more about gossip. My sisters, cousins, and aunts. They ask questions so they can tell others and chat about it. Few people use that information to offer constructive help. When someone asks how I am, they either need something from me, want me to do something, or hope for gossip. Then others hear it and needle you, pick on you, air it out, and mock you. Remember how it felt to tell someone you had a crush and be relentlessly mocked? Or a supervisor who asks how you are and the moment you start speaking tells you to do something. Caring about everyone all the time is exhausting, and many people only care superficially. I know how to express myself, often in a healthy way. But more than 90% of the time I skip it and ask what you want, or give a filler answer when I sense an ulterior motive. I do not want to be the subject of mockery and gossip. I am living the dream. Story 57. It is easy to share. It is not so easy for sharing to result in a positive outcome, whether immediately or in the longer term. Story 58. You know the meme with the pink blob in the box? That's basically it. We can open it at any time, but the result usually leaves us with no desire to do it again. Story 59. Each time I shared my emotions with a girlfriend, I could watch the sparkle in her eyes fade. It makes you seem weak and undependable. Story 60. It is completely dependent on who you are dealing with and on trust and security. Story 61. We are raised with the idea that being strong means not showing emotions. Over time, it becomes a habit and is hard to change. It is a complicated issue. Story 62. It depends on the man. I think upbringing is a major factor. Story 63. It is very difficult because nobody actually cares or wants to hear it. Even if people say they do, partners may claim we can be open with them, but showing too much emotion can be off-putting or change how they see you. Short answer, almost impossible. Even with a therapist, I am conditioned to downplay everything and hide the worst of it. Story 64. Routinely, I do not. No one cares, and it is often interpreted as soft. I have found that it is best to keep it to myself. Story 65. Depends on who I am sharing with. I generally keep my feelings to myself unless someone asks and genuinely seems interested in knowing. Otherwise, I will just say, I'm fine or I'm good. It is not because I think it is the manly thing to do. It is just years of conditioning. Most people do not care, and some will actively use things you confide against you. I have a few close male friends I can open up to if I need to. I could with my parents as well, but if I have something going on that requires me to share my feelings, they usually worry about me, so I tend to keep things to myself with them. More than one woman I have dated has actively used things I confided in them against me, especially when it comes to my insecurities. For example, my ex-fiancée knew it was important to me that her family liked me. Whenever we saw them, I was as polite as possible, offered to help with things, asked questions that encouraged them to talk about themselves, and genuinely listened. There were times when she would get annoyed with me over something small, like dozing off after eating Thanksgiving dinner while we were all sitting on the couch watching television together, and tell me, "This is why my family does not like you," or "My family noticed you were being weird at dinner. They all think there is something wrong with you," which would mess with my head and make me feel even more uncomfortable around them. She would go out of her way to tell me, "Person X said insecurity, why about you?" and things like that. She later admitted she did it deliberately because she was upset about something and wanted to hurt me so I would feel as bad as she did. I have had things like that thrown in my face several times over the years by several people. That is just one example. It tends to condition you to keep a wall between your emotions and your outward appearance. I know most women would not do this to their partner, but it has happened to me enough times that I prefer not to take the risk. Story 66. It's easy for me. It's hard to find someone who would actually care to listen unless that's what they're being paid for. Story 67. I think it's a form of self-protection. Opening up and telling others about my problems seems to make them more real. The only rational reason for me to tell others is if I realize I cannot handle them alone. Even then, I try to help myself by unloading some of my burdens onto other people who have their own problems. I do not like that. Most of the time, it does not really help, especially if you do not discuss these things with a professional therapist. I do not know, but maybe that is the biggest difference between men and women when it comes to coping. For me, a hug helps a bit, of course, but it does not solve the problem logically. Maybe it helps women more, but not me. Story 68. It is not easy because we fear it will be used against us in the future. Story 69. Extremely. It is just the consequence of doing so that is the problem. Story 70. It's almost impossible. The second best option when you open up to someone is that they do not care, because it usually gets worse from there. I will rank the possibilities. 1. Actually caring. 2. Not caring. 3. Telling you to man up or tough it out and making you and your emotions seem like a burden to everyone. 4. Remembering the things you shared in tears and using them against you, either in public or in private. This is my personal view because I have seen my friends treated in all these ways except for number 1. Although there are good people out there, they are very rare. Story 71. Time has proven it is just something that can be weaponized against me. I can manage my feelings quite productively on my own. Story 72. I can point to fewer occasions when opening up and sharing was weaponized against me than occasions when it was not, but we only need to burn ourselves once to know it can hurt. I am in a healthy place with a stable partner now, but that has not always been the case. It has taken considerable time to move away from my conditioned avoidance, and I remain guarded about who I open up to. Story 73. I can share it. It is easy for me to put my emotions into words and handle them calmly. It almost always creates distance, though, so I do not usually share. Story 74. It depends on the situation. I'm not going to discuss my traumatic experiences with someone I just met. Story 75. I do not remember if I have completely opened up to anyone in my entire life. No one cares, so I guess I will not either. Story 76. It depends on the person and the situation. Most men throughout their lives are taught to keep that to themselves. It is a double-edged sword. It can show strength when pushing through adversity, but it can be mentally draining when we need an outlet because expressing emotions is perceived as weakness. Story 77. No one cares, so work harder. We do not share because most people are going through it themselves or will use it as ammunition against you later. Story 78. It is easy for me, but do people actually care? That is what I would ask. Story 79. It depends on whom you ask. Personally, I tend to overshare, but that came after years of realizing that louder people get what they want more often than quiet people. Story 80. When you stop needing validation from others, you notice that sharing thoughts you can process in silence only causes harm. It is easy to share what you are feeling, but after being burned enough times by people who distort your words, you realize it is easier not to say anything. Story 81. I do not typically find it difficult when I need to. Anyone who could not accept or understand what I was sharing, or why doing so was necessary, would quickly be dismissed as irrelevant. Problem solved. That said, my emotional baseline is naturally high, so I seldom have much negativity to share. If I reach the point where I need to speak up, it is probably about something serious. These are not mutually exclusive, but if forced to choose, I would rather invest that energy in solving the problem that put me in that state. Sympathy and empathy from others are nearly useless to me. They do not solve my problems by themselves. Unless, of course, the total lack of empathy for others, especially the more vulnerable, is itself the problem, as is often the case with right-wing politics. Then it is a different story for practical societal reasons. Story 82. It depends on how you approach it. Most people are genuinely interested in this topic, but you must not make it all about yourself or be overly bitter. You also have to read the room. There is a time and a place for this. Story 83. It is extremely easy. We have social media, but most men do not care. Story 84. If it is about work, it is very easy. If it is about personal matters, it is very hard. From what I see of my husband, laugh out loud. He can be so blunt at work, but when it comes to relationships, in the past he always looked like he had difficulty putting his thoughts into words. Story 85. I do not trust myself to open up to anyone. That is mostly because I have been taken advantage of one time too many. Story 86. I do it all the time. Due to my background in the Civil War, people cannot call me weak, so I use this to filter people out. Those who are not willing to even touch this topic can leave. I used it to filter my small group of friends who are open about sharing traumatic pasts because I am essentially the standard, so they are more willing to share as well. Story 87. It is easy, but not in the way women want us to share our feelings. Story 88. I've never told anyone in real life that I've had pretty bad anxiety and depression for many years, which I've slowly brought to manageable levels. I also haven't told anyone that I'm so lonely it actually hurts some days, like an intense emotional pain in my chest. That's when I go into the woods to cry. If I went to my family and told them I feel so lonely that it makes me cry, they would laugh and ridicule me. I share all my feelings with random strangers on the internet, but I don't have anyone in my real life to talk to. Even if someone genuinely cared, I think I would struggle to talk to them because I would start crying, really ugly crying. I'm lonely, it makes me sad, and it sucks, but I just put on fake smiles and tell everyone I'm fine when they ask. I'll probably keep doing that until the day I die. Story 89. I'm female, but I also struggle with sharing my feelings with someone. I think it is not related to your gender. It is about your personality, childhood trauma, and other factors. Story 90. It's easy as pie, but the moment you do it, it's weaponized. Turns out women have great memories. Story 91. Not at all. Most people do not care, and enough people will use it against you. Story 92. It comes easily to me, but experience has taught me not to do such things. Story 93. Many good comments here. There is a wide variety of men, including gay men. Older American men were not taught to show their vulnerabilities, especially to other men. Returning soldiers had terrible experiences they could only share with fellow soldiers. Society as a whole followed Calvinist and stiff upper-lip British norms. Sensitive men were hammered down. Now I see many young men full of rage, swinging between fake vulnerability driven by resentment and insecurity, and violent masculinity promoted by figures like Andrew Tate and Charlie Kirk. Police chiefs and politicians hold press conferences saying criminals make them afraid. Fear is broadcast as an excuse, while bravery is ignored. Children of all genders should be taught to acknowledge fear and to master it. For men, I recommend men's groups that encourage affection and caring. Story 94. There is a time and place. You're vulnerable when you show how you feel, and haters are going to exploit that. You have to find a time and place to open up, or you end up screaming at the television or a red light. Trust me, I'm a former Catholic. Story 95. It is easy for a man to cultivate a group of friends who also like to share their feelings. Story 96. I share it with a select few people I am certain can relate. For example, my father served in the military, and I will never forget when I came back. He was the only person outside my military friends who I could talk to because he had lived through similar experiences. Since then, my mother and siblings have wondered why I do not share my experiences with them. In my experience, it is about how relatable someone is, how close your feelings are to theirs. If they are close enough, it usually helps you open up, but you must be careful. Story 97. It heavily depends on several factors. How well the man has learned to regulate his emotions, how the people around him have historically responded when he opens up, and whether sharing feelings has ever been used against him. Story 98. Several dynamics prevent men from sharing their feelings. We are conditioned not to show emotion. Men feel annoyed often, and if we expressed that as frequently as we felt it, there would be constant conflict. Men are expected to be tough and to suck it up when they feel bad. They feel they must move forward even in pain. They fake it until they make it and sometimes develop stress-related health problems as a result. Men are often less verbal. Women tend to be more expressive and convey emotions more easily. When men begin to share, they are sometimes misunderstood, so they stop trying. Hey, don't worry about us. We won't complain. Story 99. For me, it's really hard, but not for the usual reasons. It's because of all the times I've been betrayed and hurt after opening up to someone. I can't open up to my best friends or even to myself anymore. I am literally gaslighting myself into being okay. Story 100. It depends. I think many of us are tense, so our emotions often come across as anger, which is unpleasant to be on the receiving end of. As a man, you are taught that not bottling your emotions will either get you into trouble or lead to later judgment. Story 101. If a guy knows it will not be used against him or they will not connect the dots, then sure. Story 102. If you associate with halfway decent people, it's very easy, I think. The harder part is allowing yourself to open up, not that people won't listen. Often my friends share their thoughts and emotions. I am normally more reserved, so this inspires me to share a little more. I think allowing yourself to be vulnerable with your friends makes you a better friend. I have never been vulnerable and received a negative reaction. If I had, then it would have been time to drop that friend anyway. Story 103. This is very hard. Our feelings are ignored or invalidated. Just man up, bro. Story 104. It was extremely difficult. A woman I was dating used something she had observed about me against me during an argument. I felt betrayed and small. Taught me a harsh lesson. Never show even the tiniest speck of weakness to anyone I am dating. Story 105. For me, it is extremely easy. I have always been this way, and I am certainly not the norm. I have an issue with filtering myself. I always speak exactly how I feel. Some people appreciate it, many do not, but it has been extremely useful in helping me realize who my real friends are and who I can truly trust. I told someone the other day that I do not think anyone could truly be friends with me unless they are okay with me being the walking definition of an open book around them. Summed it up pretty well. Do not ask for my opinion or how I am feeling if you do not actually want to know. Story 106. It is super easy. My steering wheel and dashboard know all about my problems. Story 107. Nobody cares, so why bother? People have spent my entire life deriding men for not sharing their thoughts or emotions, but every time a man opens up, I have seen it blow up in his face. Who in their right mind would think it would be any different for them? Story 108. Not everyone responds well to vulnerability. Some people will listen and offer support, while others may not be receptive. If you are unsure, share gradually and choose someone you trust. Story 109. As a boy, it was easy. As a man, it only happens if I am falling apart, because unless it is the right person, it is social suicide. Many men are too apathetic or lack the empathy required to care about anyone else's problems, and women tend to see a man as weak if he shows that side. Of course, I am referring to difficult emotions like anger and anxiety and so on. No one wants to be around someone who is angry, and the myth that men are never supposed to feel fear still survives to this day. Positive feelings are easier to express. One area that is a challenge for me is complimenting women. I constantly want to tell women they are beautiful and validate who they are, but it is usually at work and I do not want to make anyone uncomfortable. I have found that society has shifted over time, and things that used to be acceptable are now not always accepted. Even small gestures I would not have thought anything of. So that is a delicate social area. Story 110. Brother. Easy peasy. Story 111. People open up very easily when they are shown that the person they are talking to can be trusted. This means never using the information against them, not even at the first opportunity. Story 112. Here's an analogy that I think works. Imagine you're on a ship, the steamship life. At first it's great, you get along, enjoy yourself, doing your thing. One day you get jumped and thrown overboard. You see people watching from the deck as the ship sails away. Nobody throws you a life ring, nothing. They stand there, watch, drink, and chat. So you kick off your clothes and swim as hard as you can. Not to survive, you have accepted your fate, but out of sheer spite and hatred. Somehow you catch up with the ship and scramble on board. People ask, "Are you okay?" Fuck no. You are not okay. You have survived and will continue to survive, but you are stuck on a ship with people who tried to kill you. They failed, and now they want to pretend nothing happened. To survive, you should go along with the pretense and keep your head down so you are not thrown overboard again. That's not very healthy, they say. You should open up about your feelings. And you laugh because that is absurd. Story 113. Sharing is easy. Getting the response you want is not. Therefore, no sharing. Story 114. What are you feeling? I share everything I have, but if I ever share a feeling with someone, it will come back around. Story 115. I think men tend to be more logical. Many feel there is no point because it will not change anything, and I mostly agree. Women are more likely to express their feelings. Men can feel restricted by logic, but not everyone is the same. Some people have trustworthy friends or a therapist they can confide in. Story 116. It is easy to share, but it may later be used to win an argument or merely as an insult. Story 117. I share this with the men I am close to and with some women, but usually I end up comforting them instead of being able to express my own feelings. When I say I feel lost, they reply that they feel the same and describe how hard it has been, so I become the helper instead. Story 118. I'm an open book. It does not matter whether people really care or not. It helps me get things out. Story 119. Very easy for me. I do not give a shit if anyone thinks it is unmanly. Story 120. It is not as easy as it was when I thought women were genuinely looking for equality. It only took me until my second relationship to understand that opening up is not okay. But it has definitely made me focus more on friends than on romantic relationships. Story 121. It depends on the man. Personally, I am not really worried about being judged, so I do not mind being open about my feelings. Story 122. I do not want to share the feeling of my wife's breasts with anyone else. Story 123. I had a friend who was depressed, and every time we hung out it became a therapy session. I don't care to talk about another person's problems, and doing it multiple times a week was a mood killer. Eventually I said, "You don't have to talk to me about your feelings all the time," and he stopped turning to me like that. Now I make it clear early that I'm not the person to talk to about feelings when we hang out. My dad used to have me help him wash dishes when I was a kid, and he'd complain to me about everything. I even told him I didn't want to wash dishes with him because he always gets emotional. Hanging out with the guys is supposed to be fun, not a drag. This is just my perspective. I don't want to hear about emotions. I don't talk about my feelings either, but to be honest, I couldn't care less, so I'm fine with that for now. Story 124. It's easy to share with male friends. Solid men want to be around you and genuinely care about your well-being. I have met many men on Reddit who have been in similar situations, and they do help. They let you talk and offer advice, and if they have not experienced it, they at least hate to see us in pain and will say, "I'm sorry you are going through that. It's rough. Keep your head up." They try to offer words of encouragement. I would not tell a woman about this again. I learned my lesson, and while I know not all women are like that, it only takes one. At the end of the day, it is hard for men to speak from the heart and show they are in pain. I assure you any man is willing to listen and will not throw it in your face to use against you. They may joke about it later once you have healed, but they mean well. Most of them do. Story 125. It is very hard. They are often used against me. If I share them with the right person, they should never be used against me. Story 126. Life teaches us not to open up. Women see it as a weakness and nobody cares, so there is no point in being open about our feelings. It is definitely a lose-lose situation. Story 127. It is extremely difficult because most emotions are stigmatized when men express them. It is common for people to cite emotional intelligence and an ability to handle emotions, but then utterly fail when faced with emotions that are not their own. Every man I have known has had times when they expressed genuine, valid emotions and had women in their lives dismiss them or make it about themselves. Story 128. As a guy, just enjoy the ride, and when it's over, move on. Enjoy those moments however long or short they are. There is no need to share your feelings. People won't care, as they have their own problems to deal with. Story 129. Growing up, I was told things like, "Stop crying or I will give you something to cry about. Don't be a wimp. Be a man. Only girls cry." And walk it off. My first wife also took many things I said and used them to hurt me. It was not easy at all. Story 130. For men who think nobody cares, that is not true. In order for the patriarchy to be dismantled, it must start with small actions such as this. If the person you are talking to does not care, they are not supportive, and there are people who do. Go to therapy, call your male friends, talk to your spouse or siblings. These are all valid options if you are feeling lost. Story 131. It is difficult for me to share or discuss my feelings. We have been taught that no one cares, so why bother with it? Story 132. It is just as easy for everyone to share their feelings. Online, you will probably be surrounded by trolls, or people who make light of your situation. It is rare to find someone who genuinely cares about how you feel. In real life, it depends. Are you surrounded by good men, good women, or good people in general? I have shared my feelings with unsupportive parents who did not understand. I have shared with friends who were women and they listened, and with good male friends who tried to cheer me up. The harsh truth, which no one talks about, is that most people do not know how to support someone who is open or feeling down. They are not taught how to offer real empathy instead of false concern. Good people do exist. Practice being one yourself and you will find them. Story 133. It's easy to share. It's the worst thing in the world when someone you open up to uses what you share against you, which is essentially why men don't do it. Story 134. What is the point? At best, sharing your feelings as a man will be ignored. At worst, it will be used against you. Men generally focus on tangible results. Did the bills get paid and is the house being maintained? Regardless of whether those tasks were completed, how we feel about them does not change the facts. Story 135. I'd rather share with a stranger on a bus than with anyone close to me. It's not worth the hassle. Story 136. I would first have to admit to myself it is okay to have feelings other than stoicism. Story 137. Sorry for the spelling errors. From personal experience, it's very hard. The reason is that many expect us to be tough and not show our emotions. I can only talk about everything with a few of my closest friends and my family. These experiences affected me so deeply that I haven't cried in almost 17 years. I couldn't cry when I was bullied, when I found my father dead, when a teacher at university mistreated me for 2 years, when my mother had cancer. Luckily, she is fine, or when I developed epilepsy from the stress of holding everything in. My family and a few friends are the people I can talk with. I am fortunate to have them, and I thank God for that. Without them, I might have ended my life. People judge men for showing feelings, and then they wonder why we can't. Not everyone, but many. This attitude was kind of ingrained in me, and now I am like that. I can't cry or show many emotions even when I feel sad. It is not that I do not want to. I physically cannot. Many experiences trained me to be this way. I know it is not healthy. I am working with a psychiatrist. I have tried watching sad movies and shows and forcing myself to cry, but nothing works. I hope that one day I will be able to let it out, because holding it in is harmful to both my physical and mental health. Story 138. To other men, easy. They get it. To women, do not do it. They will see you as weak and use it to hurt you more. Story 139. I am old school and do not give anyone ammunition to use against me. Story 140. Many men, in the moment, cannot recognize or name their emotions, so they often cannot share what they cannot identify or clearly sense. With time and reflection, we can experience and identify emotions. I once listened to a psychology podcast in which the doctor being interviewed said that in the womb, during the third trimester, testosterone production in a male fetus can destroy up to 2/3 of the corpus callosum, the bridge between the left and right brain hemispheres. This slows cross-hemispheric communication and may contribute to men taking longer to recognize and process their emotions. I cannot find a legitimate scientific article or the podcast episode to back that up, but I have never forgotten it. Story 141. Sharing isn't always the difficult part. It's understanding and articulating. Story 142. Easy enough to share, hard enough to handle the repercussions. Your best option for sharing is to have a good male friend you can confide in deeply. They will not use your feelings against you and will often encourage you. I have male friends I do that with. It has to be the right scenario, and you must be clear that you do not want what you are sharing to be treated as a joke, so they will follow through. The challenge I have had expressing myself to the women in my life is that they often internalize my feelings as somehow their fault, which puts them on the defensive, or their response comes later as an attack when they are emotionally overwhelmed. That has affected me. Ultimately, it comes down to the right partner, whether a male friend or a woman. You can express yourself. The partner just has to demonstrate that they will not use it against you. In general, I find women want vulnerability, but when they actually see it, they are not sure what to do with it. That creates a cycle of mistrust. Men then avoid trusting and do not open up, and it becomes a meme, for example. I cannot tell my wife I am upset because then she will be upset that I am upset with her. Then you end up supporting her and not being validated. This is why many men remain silent. Story 143. It is pretty easy when brown liquid is involved, or so someone told me at one point. Story 144. Not really, to be honest. Society makes me feel like I have to be a man, cannot show emotion, and must be masculine. That makes me hate myself a lot. Story 145. It depends on how easy you make it for them, I guess. If you are one of those people who always expects a man to have a stiff upper lip and not show any emotions other than those you find attractive, you will make it difficult for him to feel he can share his other emotions. Story 146. If you send me the greeting, "Hey, how's it going?" you will receive a long, drawn-out message about my current state in life, my recent emotions, and my plans for the near future. Only my mom and dad ever send me that message. I also talk in depth with my wife every day. I consider myself a completely open book, but I do not tell anyone anything unless they approach me first. So easy, I guess. I have no problems sharing my feelings or experiences. When I was growing up, I had trouble understanding myself and my feelings. That made it difficult to express myself to others. Time, effort, patience, and my wife helped me better understand myself and my emotions. Story 147. Sharing is easy, but you soon learn that easy is never a good option. Story 148. I've weeded out a lot of people in my life. I keep only those who genuinely care about me. If I cannot talk to them about how I feel, what is the point of being friends? To answer your question, it is fairly easy. I keep a small, curated list of people. Story 149. Sure, but everyone's situation is different. I had to be taught how to share and then handle my feelings by a therapist. Generally, that skill is worked on more with women. Story 150. My father broke the norm when he raised me and always shared his feelings. He taught me that with the right people and setting it is okay to be emotional and vulnerable. It is easy for me to express my feelings, but I am careful about whom I share them with. Story 151. Very easy. The hard part is dealing with the fallout, disapproval, or weaponization of those expressed feelings by others. That is why we prefer not to. Story 152. It depends on the person and the circumstances. I open up to my friends and they open up to me. I love it. It's just being human. No one should keep things inside. Story 153. Getting close with each other takes a while. It's not that men don't care about each other. It's that some of us were raised on the idea that the ideal man is Ron Swanson, who has no emotions. Story 154. What's the point of sharing it? It's still ours to deal with. Story 155. I have a few male friends with whom I can be fully open. It helps that half of them are in the same 12-step program. It is a lot easier than sharing with my wife. Story 156. How easy is it for men to share what they are feeling? I do not think it is difficult for most men. Something I have noticed from the women I have dated over the years is that they usually do not even ask. If they do ask, they often do not really mean it. The question is more of a casual greeting, such as, "Hi, how are you doing?" Story 157. I prefer talking about shared experiences, usually positive ones. I don't tell a friend about something good unless it is something they can experience too. For example, I will tell them about an excellent meal and share the menu, but I would not tell them about an award I received. Similarly, I only share bad things when they can avoid them, such as traffic or a bad meal. Personal experiences I keep private. I process them, then disconnect by playing guitar or writing, and then I am back to normal. Story 158. It depends on the person. I am very simple. Just be open to sharing in return, and I will tell you about every trauma I have had, where I think it came from, and what I am doing about it. Story 159. Dude, more often than not, I am not even sure what I am feeling, let alone the capacity to articulate it to someone else. Story 160. It's easy when you feel like you have someone you can confide in on your weaker days. Currently, I don't have that person, and things seem to be heading in a more difficult direction. I'll manage as I always do. Story 161. I told my girlfriend how I felt once and got dumped. It is not easy. Story 162. It really depends. On the internet, I will tell my whole life story. I will tell my sister almost anything, since she is basically the only family I have left locally who is not deceased. My best friend does not even know I am bisexual because I am worried about how he would react. Recently, I became blackout drunk and very high and ended up crying. I do not remember it. He said I was talking about my mom and my grandmother, who had both passed away 6 months apart, when I visited him. I am not representative of all men. I am open and emotional. I cry easily, and I do not care to be seen as less than for that. Story 163. With guy friends, it is easy. With partners, it depends. Sometimes they are receptive. Other times they will just drop you. Story 164. It depends on the person. I imagine that is true for both men and women. I hear stories of women whose friends or family are not good at listening to problems. There is a social stigma for men, but I would consider anyone who follows that stigma someone you should not go to for support. Aside from toxic people, some individuals are simply better at handling different issues in different ways. One person might be good at listening when you need to vent and give positive reinforcement, while another might be better when you are ready to work out practical solutions. If you are going to someone you know, chances are you already know who to go to and who not to. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.